Today's episode is sponsored by Taylor Health. Taylor Health focus on an integrative approach and specialise in preventative lifestyle factors that can optimise overall health and well-being. From health coaching, looking at lifestyle and behaviours, functional nutrition, meal planning and recipes, phlebotomy services for health screening for a multitude of reasons including health monitoring, fertility testing, pre and post surgical testing, sports and athletic performance testing and hormone monitoring. They also provide therapeutic venesection for individuals with hemochromatosis and those on testosterone replacement therapy. Let Taylor Health prioritise your health and well-being, and be sure to mention the Jim King Show to receive your discount. You can now click on the link in the description of this video for all services. Thank you for everyone watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode.
Before I got to the school, the head boy and the head girl, they were basically murdered by a triad gang. However, when I was in the prison, the youngest one was still there, and I didn't know that.
One of the killers?
Yeah. And it just so happened one day, I was brought out one door while they're coming down some steps, and I lost it. I jumped him and beat him up. And that's one of the reasons I've been in solitary for quite a long time. The time I got 28 days, it was actually these two guys tried to kill me. They tried to stab me to death in the cell. And I fought them off, just. But I went back, I was put into solitary that night, and I cried. I cried because I thought they were going to kill me.
What was the solitary cells like in it? It's like basically like a torture cell or?
Solitary cells are fucking disgusting. And they're in the basement, and it's dark, and they're covered in shit. You have barely any blankets, it's freezing cold, you're on half rations, you have no books, you have no pens, you have nothing. You're not allowed to sit in the bed during the day. They give you a stool, you sit in that stool all day long. On the island, you know, it was just brick huts in the sun. It's like 4 huts. So there's 4 guys shitting and pissing in the sun, and it just sits there. And we get to the house I grew up in Newton Mearns, and you know, I've been there since I'd been a baby. I remember just going into the living room and looking at all these pictures, and not one of me. I hadn't even got a bedroom made up for me. I was in the guest room.
How long were you in the family home for till you moved out?
4 days. They thought I was really weird because I couldn't speak English very well, and I couldn't swear. I'd forgotten every swear word in English. So your dreams are in Cantonese.
The legend himself, Stewart Burton, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jim. Nice to be here.
It's great to have you back, mate. A powerful part 1, an unbelievable story. Being banged up abroad in China, addicted to heroin, all the hellish stuff that you had to endure from a very young age.
Mm-hmm.
In part 1, we covered the story from early childhood up to age 21,
mm-hmm.
when you'd finally been released from prison, right. And you were on the plane heading back to the UK. So we'll start it off from there, and we'll just take it on a journey, my friend. So
sure,
whenever you're ready.
Yeah, I remember the flight very well. I mean, the seats been the first comfortable seats I've been in for 3 years. I was still pretty institutionalised. You know, I could have ordered anything I wanted on that flight, but I just had water and the meals that they brought. I think the flight was about 15 hours, and it took me until hour 13 to get the courage to stand up and go to the bathroom myself. You know, because normally you would, for the last 3 years, you've had to ask permission to go to the bathroom. So after 13 hours, I managed to go to the bathroom just before we're starting to, you know, come into Heathrow. And of course, I'm not knowing what's going to happen next. I had no idea what was going to happen next. Flight lands, taxi to the terminal, and then, of course, the embarrassing announcement goes out asking everybody else to stay in their seat. And whilst I was called forward. So I go forward, and the pilot, captain, whoever he was, had my passport, and the door to the plane had been opened. And there was two tall police officers in full uniform and a shorter guy in a suit, in a grey suit. It looked like some undercover officer or something, right? And the pilot handed my passport to this guy. And the guy's just looking at me. He's looking at my passport. And he just went, "It's British. There's nothing I can do. On you go." Hand me my passport. And that was it. I was off the plane. Still clutched my wee brown bag with my wafers. You know, my last prison wafers that I hadn't touched the whole flight. I am just walking off into the terminal and I've got no luggage to pick up, obviously. So I've just walked through and I just walked through immigration. Nobody stops me. It's all fine. And I had no idea what was going to happen at all.
Must have been some emotions after all the turmoil and chaos of the years in Hong Kong, and then...
I think I was numb, mate. I think I was just absolutely, totally numb. I had no idea what was going to happen next. And, you know, you just go towards those doors that go, shh, open, you walk through, shh, and they close behind you. As soon as I walked out, that's when I saw my mum and my wee brother. So they'd obviously be given the information that I was getting released that day. So they'd flown down from Glasgow to meet me at the airport. Now, I hadn't seen my brother since he was 12-year-old. And right in front, so he was a wee short guy. And now in front of me, there's like a 15, 16-year-old boy with all I can describe as a BAM haircut, a wee spiky foot, and a rubber waistcoat and big huge boots covered in spots. I didn't know what the rave scene was. I'd never heard of it. And there's this wee BAM, "All right, brother, how you doing?" from a wee 12-year-old. So that was a huge shock as well.
What was your mum like when she seen you?
Quiet, reserved. No. It wasn't a celebration, let's put it that way. I think she muttered, "Oh, sorry, your dad couldn't be here because he's working."
Must have been difficult there as well. So you travelled back up to Glasgow?
Travelled back up to Glasgow. This is Wednesday. We get to the house I grew up in Newton Mearns. And, you know, I'd been there since I'd been a baby, been there for years and years and years, going to the house and, you know, no, I don't know what I was expecting, but there was no welcome home banner. There was no crowds of people having the party.
There was nothing?
Nothing. We just walk into the house and there's just photographs everywhere and just the normal house, and it's just photographs of my brothers and their partners and their kids and all that. Well, my wee brother hadn't had kids yet, but there was pictures of everybody everywhere. I remember just going into the living room and looking at all these pictures. Not one of me. Into the dining room. Pictures everywhere. Not one of me. And into the extension at the back of the house. Pictures everywhere. And not one of me. It's as if I'd been erased. Completely erased. I remember going upstairs and I hadn't even got a bedroom made up for me. I was in the guest room. And it was big, you know, like your mum makes a guest room with big flowery pillows and stuff. That was supposed to be my bed. I remember that first night, I couldn't even sleep in that bed. I had to sleep on the floor. I wasn't used to a big comfy mattress and a duvet and stuff. So I just slept on the floor that first night.
So when did your dad come back in?
I didn't see him. So he was working away at sea probably or something. And so on the Thursday, the Evening Times used to come out and used to have like the job section on the Thursday. So I got the Evening Times on the Thursday, went through it all, found a job, phoned it up, and got an interview for the Friday night. And I was told that I needed a black shirt, a black suit and white shirt and tie for the job. So I think I went into the town on the Friday, Slater's or something like that, and bought my £99 suit, as he used to have. And I went for the interview. And it was for security work for Central Stewarts, a bouncer, basically. And I was offered the job and I started on the Saturday.
So you started right away then?
Started right away.
How long were you in the family home for till you moved out?
4 days. 4 days. I got back in touch with some old friends. One of my friends, Gary, he had a flat that he lived with his pals down in Ardennes. So I moved in with him within 4 days, 4 or 5 days.
So see, I know when you were in prison in China, you told me obviously you were addicted to heroin when you were first imprisoned.
Yeah.
But then you had no option but to go cold turkey.
That's it. I mean, the prisons in China, just to let you know, a cigarette was gold dust, let alone anything else. There were no drugs in those prisons at all.
Due to the punishment that you could receive.
They couldn't smuggle them in. It was that tight security. There was no drugs in the prison at all.
So see, when you landed back in Scotland, you're getting a job, did you?
So basically, I spent 3 years talking to myself about not wanting to do drugs again. So when I came out of prison, I didn't do drugs, I didn't smoke, I didn't drink or anything when I came out of prison for a good 2 or 3 years.
So see, when you started the job then?
Aye.
Do you remember your first day? And
I do. I remember my first night at JJ Booth's, Bloomsbury Square, down at the Newlands Hotel. I was cracking. You just have to go along on the Saturday and you meet all the other bouncers. Remember, one of them was a fireman during the day, another guy called Peter, and they're all just really nice guys. But they thought I was really weird because I couldn't speak English very well. And I couldn't swear. I'd forgotten every swear word in English. So they just thought I was really weird. I had this strange way of talking. I obviously still had my Scottish accent, but I just had this really weird way of talking. And I didn't tell anybody where I'd been. So they just tell you what you've got to do as a bouncer, and I just followed the job, you know, and and here I am after 3 years in the jail. After 4 days out, I'm in a nightclub. It was absolute bonkers, but I was in a nightclub and I was working. So I wasn't drinking. So I didn't have, and at the end of the night, they always offered you a pint at the end of the night. And I always refused, I always got a soft drink. They just thought I was weird. I suppose they were correct.
But they didn't know the backstory.
No, nobody knew the backstory. I never told anybody the backstory. I always kept that completely private.
So see, when you were locked up for all the years in China,
aye,
you're saying that you'd forgot a lot of ways how to speak English.
Yes.
Are you only speaking Cantonese at this point? Or?
Yeah. Well, obviously I could speak some English. I couldn't swear in English.
But I mean, see, when you were locked up.
And locked up, I never spoke English.
So obviously nobody's speaking English.
No.
So you're only hearing Cantonese.
So yeah,
these years.
Yeah, I only spoke Cantonese. I got so much that everything's in Cantonese. You're totally immersed in it. So your dreams are in Cantonese.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
How long did that take until you started getting it back in, Stuart? Being about
I dreamt in Cantonese for about 2 or 3 years after I got out of prison. You don't make yourself dream. Dreams just happen. But every time it was in Cantonese. I slowly managed to, learn English again. And I slowly started to remember how to swear. The thing was, swear words in English and Chinese are so different. In China, they're so descriptive. And some of the terms they have to swear in Chinese, so beautiful, so eloquent. English is quite dull in comparison, so it took a while, but obviously after a while, working in different pubs and clubs, I started to learn again, You're hearing the words, you're remembering the words. And I also went to college at that time as well to do my diploma in business admin. So I was at college during the day and working as a bouncer at night time.
I know you were quickly promoted to head bouncer.
Yeah, I became head steward in the Fairways pub in Rutherglen. Hello, Fairways. I think it's still there.
What was that like?
That was crazy, mate. That was absolutely crazy. Just a wee local pub with just all locals drinking in it. It was a tough place to work in, and I got lots of other guys who came to try it out, but they never lasted because it was quite a tough place to work. You had to get in with the locals. You couldn't take any stick off them, but you couldn't give any stick back to them. You had to tread a fine line all the time with the locals. If they got into a fight, you couldn't just chuck them out. You had to separate them and go, calm down, what are you doing? in my best broken English I possibly could. But yeah, I worked in there for about a year. Robert and May Miller used to go in there every Friday night and do a set. It was great. I mean, I was like hearing words. People would say, "Oh, he's been sin-dyed." I'd be like, "I've got no idea what you're talking about." And there's people would come up to me and say, "He's this, that." I'm like, "No, please slow down." They must have thought I was retarded or something. I don't know. But I had no idea what people were saying to me. So I just went and did my job. I really enjoyed it. I ended up after that, every Friday and Saturday night, I'd work in the fairways. And then after that, we'd go to the plaza and help the other bouncers in the plaza at the end of the night. Because usually at the end of the night in the plaza, every night it kicked off at the plaza. So a lot of the bouncers from different pubs all used to go to the plaza to just add numbers to the team there for when it kicked off, when the fights broke out.
See, when you, obviously on your return, you're working now as a bouncer and stuff like that, did you ever speak about your background, your past to anybody?
Didn't tell anybody.
Nobody at all?
Nobody at all. I kept it completely private. In fact, I was getting on really well in the job as a bouncer. And the boss, there was a couple who ran it. He's pretty well known. It's a security company in Glasgow. It's a gangster who runs it. I'm not going to tell you which gangster it was, but his missus used to phone me up every so often and say, Stuart, can you go and get him? He's in this place, he's causing problems. Can you go? So I got a company car at this point and I'm driving about Glasgow finding him because maybe somebody hasn't paid a bill or something and he's gone in and smashed the place up. So, and one night he was smashing this pub up in the centre of Glasgow and then he ends up chasing somebody up the middle of Union Street. And I'm running up behind him, screaming his name, because he's got to get done. He's got to get, the police are going to pull him. So I managed to grab him. This guy, he's a notorious gangster. And I grabbed him, put him in the car and drove him home again. Because his missus was, so that's the kind of stuff I was doing. But I was just doing a job. We are part of we called ourselves the Zombie Squad because every time the company got a new pub to work in, we were sent to go and clean that pub out. Drug dealers, arseholes and stuff we had to get rid of. So yeah, we used to do that. So I worked as a bouncer for about 3 or 4 years.
We had a joke about it earlier on. It was a bit like Roadhouse.
It has been said it was a wee bit like Roadhouse. It was crazy. I mean, this is the 90s in Glasgow. It was absolutely bonkers. I mean, it was the height of the slashings, I think, as well. There were so many slashings all the time. Glasgow city centre was actually the safest place to work. It was on the outskirts, like in Cumnock. We used to work in this place called Jenny Tears, and it's all farmers. And they've had fights about things going back generations, and they're all hard men, and they were the biggest fights. Some of them were some of those fights there were horrendous. Some of the bouncers would always end up in hospital. It was tough times. And up in Bells Hill there was a place called Saints and Sinners. Combat 18 or somebody like that, some neo-Nazi group would come in with swords and knives to try and fight people. That's how crazy it was.
Madness, isn't it?
Absolutely mental. But I'm like, I've just done 3 years in a Chinese prison. It's not that bad. I took it in my stride.
Oh, you've definitely experienced some amount of trauma in your past that we'll tap into later on in the episode,
Sure.
Stuart. But moving on from there, I know after your time as working as a doorman and bouncer, you then started doing some really inspirational work.
Well, I got some work. I worked in finance for a while, so I was working with Marks and Spencer's finance and stuff. But then they got taken over by HSBC, so I was kind of looking for a new job. But I'd met a bunch of new friends at that time who were all like studying at university, and they were like psychologists and stuff. I was going, I actually know what these guys are talking about. I decided that I might want to explore this path of work. So instead of working in sales or what have you, I decided to completely change my field and become a trainer to help long-term unemployed people get into work. I thought I'd done it for myself, so maybe I could help other people. So I started working for the Wise Group as a trainer. So I'd train people who had been unemployed most of their lives, even drug addicts, people who've come out of prison, and train them how to work in a call centre. for 13 weeks. I really loved it. It was great. I really enjoyed it.
See, when did you start really your experience in there then with like working in prisons and stuff like that? I know
Well, that was with the Wise Group as well. So they started a service called the Roots Out of Prison Service, where they were looking for life coaches to work in prisons and in the community, helping prisoners stop the revolving door, stop recidivism, and what they were looking for. I saw the job spec, and it was like people who have been in prison, who've had addiction issues, have had homelessness issues, and know about benefits. I was like, this is written perfectly for me. So I applied for it and I got the job. So we did a lot of training to become life coaches. And when I was away on holiday, I was saying to you, they had a vote to see which life coach was going to go into which prison. And whilst away, they all voted that I was the one who was going to go into Burley. So I was the first ex-con to work in Burley. I remember going up to the prison for the first day, and we're taken in to have a look around. Can I get some more water, please?
You can do whatever you like there, Stewarty boy. I'll top you up. So what was your...
So I walked in.
Just pass your glass over. Or here, I'll give you the bottle, mate. You can
Okay.
pour it.
So I walked in to the main entrance of Burley. And there's some stairs that go up to where the officers all come down to go to work. I was already really nervous. I was shitting myself, I'll be honest. I haven't been in a prison since getting out. And I was in a mess. All these memories were coming back. And there was one really terrible prison officer in Pickhook prison that I was in. And he was Wong, sir. Chan, sir. Mr. Chan. And he had a moustache. He was right Sergeant Major. And he didn't mess about with you. He was violent, thug. He was awful. Sorry. And just walked into Burley. This officer walked in the stairs. And it was him. It was a spit image of him. Apart from he wasn't Chinese. But he had this moustache. He had the cap. And he was an officer. And oh my God, I don't know what I was thinking. But I started to have a panic attack. Thinking that was him again. And I was about to get beaten up. It's crazy because I've been out of prison for quite a long time by then. But that was my first time and I was shaking. So then they take you through the turnstiles and you go up and you walk up to the main door to go in. And one of the office staff who said, "Are you okay?" Because she obviously had noticed there was something wrong with me. And that was the first day I went into Burley to work. Oh my God, man, I was terrified. But then I had to go back in the next day, and then the next day, and the next day. I was working in the Link Centre, and all the officers in the Link Centre have been there like 20 odd years. They remember the Burley riots. They've been there when all the big names have been in and out of Burley, and they don't like ex-cons. So I walk into that Link Centre and every single one of them looks at me in disgust and hatred. Right, here's an ex-con. Because they didn't know who I was or where I was from. They didn't know if I'd served time in Berlin or served time in Adwell or what prison I'd served time in. So I walked in there and none of them would talk to me. They all just looked down at me. I had to put my hands up to go to the toilet. And I was in one of the side offices and I was given a corner of a desk to sit at, and that was my desk. It was rough. I couldn't go anywhere. I had to wait at the gate to get picked up by an officer to get brought up to my work. And then at lunchtime, they had to walk me down again. So they wouldn't let me eat my sandwiches with them. Every Friday, they used to get a Chinese. I was never allowed to join them. It was pretty rough.
What was your first experience with the prisoners then?
It was actually really good. Of course, they laughed and joked. They, "What the fuck? What's this, mate? What's this? How you going to help me?" I said, "Listen, mate, I'm here from the Wise Group. We're here to offer you some support when you get released. We can help you with your housing. We can help you with this and with that and that. All I've got to do is ask you a few names, a few questions, and that's you. Off you go. That's it. And then you'll get introduced to a life coach. You can decide whether you're going to work with them or not. That was it." So I had to I had to give a list of names to the officer to go and get them from the halls. And they never would for me, at the start. Mine would always come over late. And then he'll bring like 12 of them across and say, you got 5 minutes, hurry up. So I'd have 5 or 10 minutes to interview all these guys. And so I did. And I never complained. Because I understood what was going on. And I did it. I never complained. And I'd done my job. And I did it. And I turned up. And I did what they wanted me to do for 6 months. I did that. And then eventually, they started to get to know me. Things started to calm down a bit. I remember the first day I get invited to go to the pub with them after work one night. That was a huge turning point.
Just the guards, obviously.
Yeah, that's the guards.
It's not going to be the prisoners.
No, the prisoners, mate, no. But the guards.
So did they get to know your real story then?
No, I never told MD my real story. No, how can you talk to a guy in Barlinnie, right? He's from Ruckazy and he's been in and out of jail his whole life. How is he going to relate to me if I say, oh, I was in China? He's not going to relate to me. Occasionally, if they wouldn't talk to me at all, I would say, I used to take smack as well. Get a bit of eye contact from them and then build up a rapport with them. I never told MD my full story.
So that's what I was going to say. I think people can relate to people who've been through similar experiences, and also you would get more respect if they thought, fuck, he's been in jail in China.
Exactly, but I didn't want to use that as the only tool in my book. You know, and a lot of people, they would go and introduce me. Hi, how you doing? I'm Jamesy. I did 6 years of this, and I did this, and I did this, and I did this. And it almost sounded to me like you're kind of showing off a wee bit. I would go in and say, I'm Stewart. I'm just here to offer you support.
So see, when you were in there, what was the results then of the work? Did you get good
honestly,
feedback?
It was fantastic. It was really, really good. We had a really great team. You know, I was interviewing at some point, I was interviewing 20, 25 guys a day. I would be interviewing like hundreds different people every single week, filming, and we'd do a lot of good work. We would even do work before they got released. We would get these guys housing before they... We knew what the rules and the laws of the housing were, that these guys had to have accommodation to go out to. So I'd be at the housing officer. No, this is the law. This is the rule. This is the law. This is the rule. We'll support them getting into accommodation. We would have people going into jobs. You know, we did a lot of work. Some people you can't help, but there's some people there who just need a little bit of support. I worked with a lot of agencies as well, like Families Outside. Families Outside, we did this joint thing together where they brought wives and girlfriends of prisoners inside Barlinnie to a classroom. And we all sat down together and they could tell their partners how difficult their life is outside and their worries and concerns, what would happen once they got released. It had never been done before. There were so many groundbreaking things that we did there, and we supported a lot of people.
I know you were the first male worker
up in Cornville
to be sent to the women's prison.
Well, I wasn't the first one. I was the only one who could survive.
Well, that's what I meant. Sorry,
that's all right.
That one wrong.
No, that's all right. So we had life coaches in Pullman, Addywell, Greenock, Barlinnie, and Corntonville, and so lots of guys, life coaches, would go up to Corntonville to work as a life coach, and they just couldn't handle it. They just couldn't handle working with the women. So I said, okay, I volunteered. I went up there one Thursday and I don't know, I was able to work with this woman. And these women, you have to realise, women are in prison for different reasons. I don't know what the statistics are, but it was 90+% of them are victims of some sort of sexual abuse at some points in their life. So to have a man, I felt honoured and privileged that they would come into a wee side office and feel safe to sit down with me and share their stories with me and accept help and support. Because any other guys that offered them help and support in the past has had only maybe another idea what they're going to get out of it. So I felt pretty privileged and honoured that these women trusted me enough. So I used to go up there every Thursday to work in Corntonville, and that was quite an honour and a privilege, as I say.
How long were you working up there?
Oh man, I can't really remember. I mean, I was in Barlinnie for about 3 years. I know, it's funny, isn't it?
Making a habit of that, Stuart.
I'm making a habit of 3 years, right? And so, you know, maybe a year and a half I was going up in Corntonville. It was one day when I was in Corntonville at lunchtime, we don't see anybody. I'm sitting there by myself and there's all these research papers. So I'm working with prisoners. I like to read the research. And I read all the Corton Vale ones about the suicides and stuff that used to happen in Corton Vale, probably still happen now. And then there was this other one. It was brand new report about the undiagnosed autistic spectrum disorders in the Scottish criminal justice system.
And that was the question I was about to ask you, because let me see how good my memory is here, right? Was it 14.7% undiagnosed?
That was it, in D Hall in Berlin. So they just did it in D Hall, and that was a percentage, 14.7 of undiagnosed autistic spectrum disorders in D Hall in Berlin. And I read this report. For me, what that said was 14.7% of all the punters I'm working with could be undiagnosed autistic. So I was like, I need to know about this. That's a huge percentage of the people I'm working with. And if that's causing them to have difficulties, I need to learn about this. So I told my wife at the time, and she went, I know that guy. He's my pal's fiance, the guy who wrote the report. He was head of the criminal justice social work in the West End. So I managed to get an interview to go and see him.
He spoke to me as well about, I don't know if you applied for a job, the children's panel.
Aye. So
the way you explained it to me, it was quite comical as well.
It was quite pleasing of me, right? So I saw this and I was thinking, this could be really interesting. Let's see how far I can push this changing my life around scenario. So you have to phone up this number and they send you an application form. And by the way, that application form is thick. And it's a psychological application form. Luckily, at the time, I was married to a woman who had a master's in psychology, because we sat down and it took us about a week to complete that application form. So I put it back in the envelope, made sure it was all the right way round, grabbed my last disclosure, because I had lots of disclosures for all the different places I worked, that basically says he was in prison for 2 armed robberies. It says that on your disclosure, 2 armed robberies, and I put that right on top of the application form. Sealed the application form and went, it's just, nobody's got to get in touch with me. Or maybe the police will come to the door and say, you're being cheeky, son.
So see on the form, did it just say 2 armed robberies? Did it say Hong Kong or anything on it? Or?
Oh, yeah. So your disclosure will come in and it discloses all unspent convictions. And because of my age when I was sentenced, my convictions will never be spent, because if you're under 18 or something and you get sentenced to more than 2.5 years in custody, your conviction's never spent. So mine's never spent. It's always going to be on my record. And I think it does say Criminal Court Hong Kong on it as well, so, which would be quite interesting for anybody to read. First of all, it's the first thing they're going to take out, the disclosure, 2 armed robberies in China. what they got to think?
They must have thought, so they've got you in for an interview?
Months later, I get invited. I get this letter.
What are you thinking?
Wait, there's no way. I thought, I'd just forgotten about it. I thought there was no way. So I have to go in, and I just nice and smart, as smart as I can. And you go into this office, and seriously, it was a big long table at the back with about 12 people sitting at it, all waiting for the monster to enter the room.
The big bad armed robber.
That's it.
Robber, should I say?
Armed robber.
Armed robber.
Aye.
From China.
Exactly. And I walk in the room, and they're all like expecting like that looking. I'm like, hello, how you doing?
What questions were they asking you? They
were like, okay. And they're asking me why. And I told them why. Just the way I would tell you why. Because I feel I was let down. And I think I've got a lot of experience, a lot of good experience, and I want to offer, obviously there's going to be a lot of training involved, and I want to be able to offer my experience to help kids so they don't end up doing what I did in the future. And it was about 2 or 3 interviews I had to go, because you go through that past them, then you have to pass another set of interviews. Then I had to keep going to the top person, because they had to really make sure I was okay, and made me do lots of tests and stuff. And they had to speak to my boss. They got So basically, they were speaking to Berlini and Cornton Vale and asking whether I was, I should be allowed to do it. And then obviously they were getting good feedback. So I had to do lots of training as well, because you can't just go and work. You have to know what the laws are. So I did about a year's worth of training as well to become a member of the children's panel. It's really intense. It's a proper course you have to pass. And I remember that day going up to the city chambers and getting my wee certificate to say I've passed. I'm now a member of the Scottish Children's Panel. That was insane.
How long did you work there for?
Oh, so it was voluntary, right? So it wasn't work. So, well, not as long as I wanted to. It was only a couple of years. Simply because I moved away.
That's what I was going to speak to you about. I know you had a young family.
That's right. So we
decided to move to India.
Well, no, we didn't decide to move to India. We basically got made redundant because of the recession in 2008. So I lost my job and I went to uni. I wasn't supposed to go to uni, but I talked myself onto the autism master's course at Strathclyde. I didn't get the certificate because I didn't have a bachelor's degree, and I also went to Glasgow Uni at the same time I did my counselling diploma. But there was no jobs, and we had a 1-year-old and 2-year-old. I just bought a townhouse in the West End of Glasgow. I was doing good, right? But then all of a sudden, we couldn't get a job. So we decided, let's go away for a year with the kids for an adventure, and hopefully by the time we come back, the job market would have sorted itself out. So we lived in India for 8 years. So we went to India and went, you know what? This is quite nice. We quite like this, And so we ended up staying there.
Was it Goa?
It was Goa, yeah.
I know you did a bit of an experience over there, doing some inspirational stuff as well.
Well, you don't go to do inspirational stuff. I went out there, and because I'd just been diagnosed autistic, and I'd just done this course in autism, I'm all autism up, right? And because of all the research, we knew that the kids would be autistic as well. My father, my nephews, my nieces, everybody's autistic in my family. So we knew the kids were going to be autistic. So when we took them to the school in India to try to get them into the school, we had to train all the staff about autism. And then I would look for local charities where I would go and offer them support and do some training and do some autism stuff. And it just kind of grew from there. We ended up doing Goa's first autism awareness event 1 year in 2014, I think it was. And I did some charity work. And then I was working in schools, training people about autism. And then this guy and his wife, who ran a school in Anjuna, were the market kids, all the hippies live in Goa. And he was a builder. He didn't know anything about running the school. And it was his wife, and she done a runner. She left him in charge of the school for 150 kids, from infants to 15 years old. And I think because I was probably the only person in Goa who didn't smoke dope, he gave me a shout. He said, Stewart, can you help me out, please? It took him a few months of persuasion, but he eventually persuaded me. So I ended up a principal of a Cambridge international school in Goa.
There you go. Who would have thought it?
It was crazy, isn't it? Absolutely crazy. And you know what? I loved it. And it was really good. And I worked with the cleaners, I worked with the teachers, helped the kids. It was great.
See, before you started doing that type of work, what was the research in India at the time on autism? Was it?
It was very 2 generations ago, 1990s. There was no up-to-date research done on it. And so they're really struggling with the new ideas, the new thought processes. It was all fix my child, give my child a pill, give them medication, put them in a home, lock them away. And they were locked away, and there were kids found chained up. There was a woman found 35 years. She'd been chained up in a room because she was autistic. Really bad. Witch doctors, still take them to witch doctors. And a lot of the tribal areas, if a mother thought there was something wrong with the kid, she would have to go to the village elders to be allowed to take the kid to a doctor. And they would say, no, take him to the witch doctor instead. It was really backwards, really, really backwards.
What did the witch doctors do?
Whatever they believe. It's by their belief systems, isn't it? It's not for me to judge. In the school, I remember going into the school for the kids the first time, and the head teacher was like, don't tell anybody else about autism because all the other mothers and fathers will think their children will be able to catch it. So here's my kids in this school. And what we did was, with the nursery and the kindergarten teachers, if they had an issue with one of our boys, they could come and ask us about it. And they'll say something like, Mr. Burton, your son keeps hiding under the desk. We try and pull him out, but he's screaming and shouting. I'm like, well, just don't pull him out then. What happened beforehand? Oh, he was in the playground. There was lots of noise and stuff. We'll just leave him. He'll calm himself down. And they'd come back the next day, Mr. Burton, we did it and it worked. So eventually the head teacher went, okay, these guys know what they're doing. So I ended up training all the teachers in the school. On Saturday mornings, they would be subjected to me talking at them for 6, 7 or 8 hours learning about autism. But I remember leaving that school with the kids and they had 10 openly autistic kids in the school from having 0 and worried about kids catching autism. All of a sudden we started accepting autistic kids into the school and it was fantastic. It was absolutely beautiful.
How long did you stay there? I know you've been... When did you leave India?
I left India in 2018 because my last job finished, so that meant my visa finished. And 2018, in 2017, I went back to school. So in 2017, it was my school's 50th anniversary.
This is the part that I was waiting on because it was the school reunion in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
So did you leave straight from India?
No, this was before I left India.
So that's what I'm saying, but you travelled from India
to
Hong Kong and
oh God.
my synchronicity moment on the plane.
It was crazy. So I'd been speaking and they had this 50th anniversary. I managed to get a ticket for free because it would cost a fortune for the dinner, for the meal. And so I booked my flight from Goa to Bombay. And then I booked my flight from Bombay to Hong Kong. And I was saying to my wife at that time, listen, I might not come back from Hong Kong. I might get arrested at the airport because I had been deported. So I was already expecting to maybe get a 1 year's prison sentence as soon as I landed in Hong Kong.
You know, thinking, what the fuck am I doing? Why would I go back there? What was the thought process?
I don't know if you've spoken to me recently, but I don't make very good judgment calls all the time, Tim. But I really thought there was a possibility I'd be fine. Obviously, because I had kids in India, I'm not just going to dump my kids. I had a high level of expectation it was all going to be fine. But it just so happened that friends from the next village, 2 or 3 paddy fields over from where we were living in India, Martin and Tonya, hey guys, they were travelling to Canada via Hong Kong. And we did no idea, but they had booked the same flights from Goa to Bombay and Bombay to Hong Kong. So we're on the same flights together. So going into Hong Kong, Tonya and Martin stood at the back at immigration, watching me slowly move towards the front of the immigration queue.
How many years had it been for you?
23.
23 years.
And I'm expecting to get huckled maybe at the immigration. I just handed over my British passport. He saw his British passport. The immigration officer still talking to his pal. On you go. Didn't check a thing. And I walked through to get the baggage. That's, you know, where you get your luggage and stuff. I walked through there. And there's Martin behind going, yes, Stewart, you're through, you did it. I'm like, shut the fuck up, Martin, would you? So we went our separate ways. I found a wee hotel in Happy Valley where I used to live in Hong Kong. And it's all completely different now. But a lot of it was the same, you know, we recognise a lot of it.
How did you feel when you were just walking in there yourself?
Hong Kong
again?
Weird. That was really, really very, very strange.
Because you've got...
But my focus was, though, that the school was looking for volunteers that afternoon to help get the school set up for that party at night time. So that's where my focus was, you know? So I maybe wasn't thinking as much walking through the streets of Hong Kong, but I was thinking about it a little bit, you know, that this is weird. Because the last time I walked along the streets in Hong Kong was like early January 1991.
And plus you were a drug addict. You're not in the right mind frame either.
Exactly. And it's all these streets I'm familiar with. The trams still went down the same streets. The taxis were still the same colour. There was lots of these cars with this funny T on it. I didn't know what the hell they were. Turns out they're Teslas. I'd never seen a Tesla before. So what the hell was that? But it's still just full of Chinese people everywhere in their beautiful clothes, all wear face masks. Even before COVID, they all wear face masks. They always wear face masks.
So what was it like when you got to the school then?
This is one of the things, right? This is when the movie screenwriter wants to make up a story that sounds really, really good. Because you couldn't make this up. I'm walking up to the school in the middle of the day, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Sun is shining, nobody else in the street. I'm walking up the side of the school. And round the corner, this guy comes. And only the two of us on the street. It was Mr. Force, a teacher who came to the court when I got sentenced all those years ago. He just looked up. He took a few more steps. Sorry, Mr. Force, but he's a bit blind now. No, see, I had to come a wee bit closer to me to actually realise it was me. And we just embraced straight away. And we both said, I said, look, I'm so sorry. He says, no, I'm sorry. We didn't do enough or something like that. And he just looked at me and went, I've told so many people about you and they're all up here waiting to meet you. And he took me back up into the school, introduced me to the new principal. This is Stewart. This is the guy I was talking about. Because, you know, this is the guy who'd been in prison and now was running an international school in India. And this is Stewart. And it was amazing. I was accepted and welcomed by everybody. And I never thought that. I've been carrying this guilt for 23 years. I've hated myself for what I'd done. I tried my hardest to undo all the crap that I'd done to people over the years. And all of a sudden, I wish I'd spoken to them 20 years ago. Because I've just spent 20 odd years of my life guilt-ridden.
Did you ever get to meet anyone that you ran about with in that chaotic period? Your friend Lennon, for example, did you ever find out what happened to him? You don't know?
No, don't know.
See the last time you saw him was in the hospital wing, the second prison?
Right. That's right, I was in the hospital.
That was the very last time
you ever saw him? That very last time I saw him.
You're not going to tell us his real name in this episode?
In any episode? No. So I remember I met lots of people. Back in India, sorry for going backwards here, but we had known this guy for 3 years in India, and it was only after 3 years he went up to my wife and he said, "Did he used to be known as Stewart Cuthbertson?" She was like, "Yes." "Did he used to live in Hong Kong?" She went, "Yes." "That's a legend, Stewart Cuthbertson." I'm like, what? Everybody thought I was dead. They all thought I was dead. Nobody thought I was alive because I just disappeared.
But you said it to me earlier. If you didn't spend that time in those prisons,
I
you
would be dead. I would be dead, absolutely. But the most important person that I saw that night was towards the end of the night. Somebody, listen, I won't tell her name, but there was a girl who was there when I was arrested. All those years ago, when we were exchanging rings. And they went, "Yeah, she's over there." And I looked up and she was looking directly at me already. She was sitting on some steps. And her eyes just, and I'm like, "I'm so sorry." And we both just got up and started moving towards each other. And she was traumatized by what happened that day, seeing what, when I got arrested. That was a trauma that she's had her whole life, I was so sorry. It was so beautiful to see her again. And we're still in touch today. But this is what I mean by, you affect people by what you do. And it wasn't just the people who were affected directly by the crimes or robberies and stuff. Simply because she was there and witnessed my arrest, that traumatized her for many years.
There was a lot of people commenting on part one. When you told that part of the story, and they were saying maybe it was a setup. Maybe her putting the ring on your finger was a signal to the police. And
Really?
this is the stuff that they were coming up with.
Really? I never read any of that.
So I don't know.
I've never thought of that. I've never thought of that. No, absolutely not.
You'll know her better than anyone.
Of course I do.
So
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I can say why absolutely not. Because when the police had taken me to the central station, the police station, they really were celebrating the fact that they were just so lucky to have arrested me by chance. They weren't saying it to my face, they were saying it together. And then and we said we were just driving past. And it wasn't said in a way that would matter to anybody who heard it. It was just totally by chance that they drove past and saw me. Because I'd been playing, keep my head down for months. I wouldn't be seen standing on. You've got Pedder Street is like standing outside KFC in central Glasgow, right? If you're a wanted man, you're not going to stand at the corner of Union Street and Argyle Street or in the middle of Buchanan Street. That's where I was when I met her, and you don't go there. I was keeping a low profile, right? So it was centre of Hong Kong. And it was just by chance. And I really do believe that. I never thought about the ring in the finger.
People
That's
were
interesting.
saying, you know how they can come up with all these scenarios?
Yeah.
But they're saying that was a signal to the police to arrest you. But
That's interesting because what they actually don't know is something I haven't said in the story.
What's that?
When I was in the central police station, the police kept coming in because they were trying to find out my family and stuff. And I wasn't saying a thing. Because Lennon had told me to keep my mouth shut. I'll get killed. And they were coming in, do you know somebody from such and such address? Because somebody from such and such address was calling and calling and calling and calling to see if I was okay. It was her address. She wouldn't have been phoning if she had set me up. I hope you're listening to this. By the way, I know you will be listening to this. I know you did set me up, but I never thought about that. I'm going to talk to her later about that.
Before we
That's
go
interesting.
further on in the story,
Okay.
you getting back to India and stuff like that, writing the first book on the beach.
Yeah.
But before that, I want to ask you a few things.
All right.
Still, is there anything that you never mentioned in part one about your time in the prisons that you feel like you could speak about now? Like any situations you got yourself into, or being suicidal, attempts on your own life?
I never attempted my own life in prison because I was straight. I only ever attempted to kill myself when I was drunk or on drugs. That's always been outside the prison. I think the best thing I could do is like people just go to the website and buy the book. Number 04story.com, put themselves on the wait list, and then they'll be able to read the book. There's so many things. Murders and hangings and fights and so many things happen, Jim. It's very difficult. You've only got an hour and a half.
No, I know. It's a lot. When I sit and listen to you, I'm like, that's a fucking incredible story. You know, and we've not even spoke about most of the things that you witnessed and endured. Some of the stuff we can't speak about.
Well, some of the stuff we can't speak about. I mean, I don't know, did we speak about last time about the guy who was part of the triad gang that killed the 2 kids in my school?
No, we never spoke about that. Are you comfortable speaking about that now?
I've got to touch on it a little bit. So before I got to the school, the head boy and the head girl, and I'm not going to mention their names because I'm not. That's not for me. But if people know the school, they can find out. They were basically murdered by a triad gang.
What was the reason behind it? Were they abused and murdered, or was it drugs?
It was a terrible murder.
You give more detail, no?
I'm not going to give details on this, Jim. Listen, if people want to read about it, they can read about it. I'm not here to talk about what happened to these kids, these two amazing individuals, which scholarships have been set up in their names. However, when I was in the prison, the youngest one was still there, and I didn't know that.
One of the killers?
Yeah. And
His first prison?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And somebody at one point, remember I'm in the room with 20 murderers, but he wasn't in the room because they weren't stupid, they didn't put us in the same place. And he walked past the cell one day, and one of the other murderers He said, he killed 2 of your friend.
So what happened?
I bided my time. And of course, you think about it, you think about it, you think about it, you think about it, and think about it. And it just so happened one day, I can't remember where I was getting brought back from, of like a hospital appointment or something like that. But I was brought out one door while they're coming down some steps, and I lost it. I jumped him and beat him up. And that's one of the reasons I've been in solitary for quite a long time. Because I think the prison were embarrassed that they allowed us to get close together. So there's a couple of times I've had a couple of fights in the prison where I've instigated the fight, and that was the first time I had instigated the fight.
Rightly so.
Oh, I don't know. I'm not judge and jury, am I? Who's better than who? Is this whole like who's the worst criminal? Who's the best criminal? You know, that's what we do in prison, isn't it? I'm in for a murder. If you murdered a wee lassie, you're bad. If you murdered somebody your own age, it's okay. If you murdered a grandmother, you're bad. There's a hierarchy of murderers. There's a hierarchy of rapists. There's a hierarchy of armed robbers. Armed robbers are held in quite high esteem. If you're a thief, you're not. You're scum.
It's just a bit insane because you're only 18 at that point and you're housed with these, as you said, murderers, rapists, child killers.
Yes.
And you're having to mingle and survive in that environment.
One of the worst thing is they always had their paperwork. Somebody would sometimes bring in all the paperwork and share the paperwork.
So you could see exactly what they were in for.
And you can see the photographs as well.
Is that right?
Autopsies and everything.
That's
Crime
heavy.
scenes. That was heavy. And there was one I can remember very clear. I can remember the guy lying in the slab. I remember the close-ups of the different wounds in different parts of his body.
What happened there? Was he stabbed? Shot?
Just another victim, you know, and yeah, that was quite difficult to get used to. And the guy who was the double murderer as well, he was scum. He was really scum. You know, there was some really bad scum in that prison that just, and then there was other boys who accidentally killed somebody, you know, who had remorse and you felt for them. So there's a hierarchy of like different people in the prison.
It's mad that you had to experience that environment, but as you said, it more or less saved your life in a way.
Totally saved my life. It totally saved my life. I mean, the first prison nearly killed me. Right?
I shouldn't laugh, I'm sorry,
okay,
Stuart.
no, the first prison, because I did have a psychotic episode. I don't know if we talked about that last time.
I think we did just tap in it.
I had a psychotic episode. I went, okay, I really believe they're going to try and kill me. So I decided, okay, I'm going to take all you out first. If I'm going to die, you're all coming with me. And I went out that day, and I was just plotting in my head. I'm going to attack a bunch of murderers. And I did. I lost my mind. The guards came in very quickly and, gave me a wee tickle for a good 10 minutes. And I got chucked into solitary.
What was the solitary cells like in it? It's like basically like a torture cell or?
No, sorry. Torture cell.
Try to make it sound.
What was it? A torture cell? No, it was
a
like
dungeon type.
It was okay, so it's like a normal cell, but in the basement.
Right.
And okay, so every prisoner will know remand cells can be manky because people are just in and out, they don't look after it. Long-term prisoner cells are immaculate because we polish edges. We've got time. We polish it with a toothbrush. Solitary cells are fucking disgusting. And they're in the basement. And it's dark. And they're covered in shit. Dirty protests. Nobody cleans it. They throw you in there naked. You have barely any blankets. It's freezing cold. You're on half rations. You have no books. You have no pens. You have nothing. You're not allowed to sit in the bed during the day. They give you a stool. You sit in that stool all day long. You get your food last. Your food is always cold. It's almost you just can't eat it. And you have no interaction with anybody. They keep you so far away in the solitary cells, unless there's a big riot and there's lots of you there, that you don't even hear anybody.
What's the longest you'd ever served in solitary?
I don't know. Did I ever watch me? Didn't have a calendar. I'd say maybe 2 months. And I flipped. I remember I'd do things, I'd do mind games, right? I'd do that. And I'd try and call my mum of my mind. I'd try and do things that I remember my favourite watch and think that that was the time. You wouldn't know what the time was, whether it was dark, whether it was night. There was rats. I had a rat in my toilet, dead once. It's cockroaches. It's miserable, mate. It's really, absolutely, dreadfully miserable. And it's filthy as well. That was in the maximum security place. I was in the Cat A Plus for a while as well. When they didn't really know what to do with me, they put me into the prison within the prison, and that's solitary cells as well. And that's where your real nutters that aren't allowed to have contact with other people are housed. Not the ones who are in the 20 in the room. We used to hang out together. These are the guys, they can't risk being in another cell, in another room with anybody else. I was put in with them.
So you're like the mass murderers then, or?
No, they complete lunatics who would just bite your face off you.
Right.
It was like, anytime you had to leave that cell, 3 prison officers had to be there to take you out of the cell. You had to get handcuffed before you got out of the cell, and you had to be moved everywhere by 3. That was the one that still had the execution chamber. Yeah, it was at the door. So you walk past the execution chamber every second. I think we talked about this before, but that was bad. On the island, it was just brick huts in the sun. So that the longest I was in the brick hut for was 28 days. And it's just a dirt floor, brick hut. And it's got a channel out the back. When there's water, that's where you shit and piss. There's not always water in a tropical island. And so during the summer, there's no water. So you got to shit and piss in a trough at the back. It's like 4 huts. So there's 4 guys shitting and pissing in the sun. And it just sits there. So you think about the bugs, the flies, it's rancid. The time I got 28 days, it was actually these two guys tried to kill me. They tried to stab me to death in the cell. And I fought them off. Just. But I went back, I was put into solitary that night, and I cried. I cried because I thought they were going to kill me. I thought I was going to die that night. I really thought.
That's in the second prison as well?
That's the second prison.
It's crazy.
I was stupid. I turned my back to them, and I bent down to help somebody. And they're stupid as well. One of them had a knife, shank, whatever you want to call it. And the other guy came up. He could have just gone plunge, plunge, plunge. But the other guy kicked me in the back instead. So there's 2 of them attacking me. One kicked me in the back. If the other guy had just gone plunge, 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 it would have been all over. But the guy with the knife, he ends up getting taken off to the mental place in the pole, in a straitjacket, with the pole around the neck.
Like a wild animal, really,
Yeah.
isn't it?
He was mental. He was from Shenzhen, which is the West China. He was an absolute nutter. 91216. 91716. I remember his prison number. Something like that.
You
Anyway.
remember your own number?
Oh, which one? All of them?
All of them?
I've got tattooed in my arm, so don't forget. My boys shout out. I think it's really funny now because I've learnt about the story. They shout out my number. Gowling, Chatloling. I'm like, yes, sir.
Never leaves you, Stuart.
No.
As I say, but you were only a young kid still going through all that experience.
Yeah.
We spoke about it there. It's saving your life in a way as well. But again, having to go through more trauma, carrying that now into your adult life. Is there any other prison highlights that you want to speak
Prison
about?
highlights.
Before we move on in this story.
I think we should probably move on.
You want to move on?
Yeah, go for it.
Right, so obviously you spent was it 3 days you were in Hong Kong for the
3 or 4
union?
days. 3 or 4 days I was in Hong Kong. It was fantastic. Came back to India. But they said, so when I was there, they were making this DVD. Did we talk about the DVD? So they made a DVD about the school's anniversary.
You did, yeah. Well, you mentioned it to me.
Yeah, and
spoke
so about this amazing school. You know, Chris Patton, the last governor's daughter, went to this school. Harry Hill, all right, he went to our school. Olympians went to the school. So the whole DVD is about, this is an amazing school, it's amazing, it's amazing, it's amazing. And then they decided to interview me. And it was like, not all our kids were angels. and I was interviewed down Wan Chai. It was a typhoon. Typhoon had just started, and Sean was given he had set up the camera, and he went, okay, and he was supposed to interview me. But I don't know if you notice, I like talking. And so he didn't even have to ask me any questions. I just talked for the full 15 minutes. And so that came out. They said you should write the book about it. So I wrote a crap book about it. So the video and my book came out at the same time online. And I just went mad. And people just bought the book. I was getting messages. My inbox was full. Oh my God, Stuart, you got to do it. Oh my God, you don't. And all these stories. In fact, too many stories. I had to shut myself off from it because it was so depressing about all these other people. And that's where I found their true stories about how many kids from my year are dead from drugs, from this posh international school, are dead. I didn't know how many were dead. They all thought I was another one who was dead. A lot. We're talking a high percentage of kids died. And still a high percentage are struggling with drugs and addiction to this day. And a high percentage have got mental health issues. And I was getting all these messages, and people say, you have to tell the true story. You didn't tell enough of the story. So basically the book got pulled because it sold about 400 or 500 copies really quickly. But it got lots of 4 and 5 stars on Amazon, apart from the editing and the grammar and the design, because it was awful. So that's when it got pulled and decided to rewrite it.
So I know you went back to India and you started writing the book on the beach.
Yeah, I wrote it on the beach over 3 months.
Was that the very first book?
Yeah.
What was the experience like? Yeah, it must have been hard for you.
Do you know what? I didn't go to see all the stories I've told over the years. Just can't put those stories on, Jim. I didn't go deep. So I just skirted across the surface. Right? It was only later when I rewrote it and I went deep into the facts and the feelings and the smells and the senses and everything else. That's when it really affected me. Affected my mental health quite badly. I was writing some of it.
So coming to the surface again, isn't it? And
Yeah.
reliving the trauma.
It's trauma, mate. I've got complex PTSD.
Would you say it was also a healing as well in a way?
Absolutely not.
No?
Absolutely not. There's been no healing in this one, but the only healing I can have out of this is saying this is not a vanity project. There has to be something good that comes out at the end of this. We've talked about this. We can talk about all this stuff that's going on. I'll never be fixed. There's no therapist out there who'd want to have to deal with my crap. Okay? I probably couldn't afford it anyway. And who would I be if I was on this? Oh no, I'm all nice and calm now. My children would be frightened. I'd be a monster if I was calm and normal. So, but other people, kids today, adolescents are going through the same kind of issues. We can use this, especially for neurodiverse, autistic kids. We can create something out of this that's got to support them. Nothing's got to support me. I'm broke. I was in a hostel in Italy recently, and the guy came over and woke me up. He went, "You okay?" Supposedly I was on my hands and knees like that, screaming in Cantonese. Can you imagine all these kids in the hostel going, what the fuck is this strange Scottish guy doing? Screaming in Cantonese.
It's mad, isn't it?
So I have night terrors and stuff.
But it must be, in a way, do you think that'll ever leave you?
Nope.
It's a lifelong trauma that's always there. And
lifelong? I've lived how many lives so far? I'm still alive, mate. So when you say lifelong, I mean, if you think what's happened, we haven't even touched what's happened in the last few years.
It's crazy. It's a crazy story,
Right.
Stuart. This is what I mean. And
I'm still alive.
you make my job a lot easier because, as you said, you like to talk and you like
Right.
to tell a story. But
Okay.
we'll move on, right?
Right.
When did you leave India?
I left India in 2018. Yeah.
Where did you go from there?
So I went to Italy for a while. I was So as you do, you meet somebody who introduces you to somebody else, and the friend I knew in Italy, she was studying to become a teacher, and she was doing the autism, the special education part of it, and she introduced me to a couple of the professors from the course. She said, I've got a friend here in Rome who knows a lot about autism. So I ended up going over there to work on helping them rewrite the autism training manual and stuff. But unfortunately, it never really came off because one of them decided to retire and the other one got pregnant with her husband. And you see the questions coming. So it didn't really happen. So I ended up in Italy anyway, and ended up like teaching this guy, this English boy, A-level economics. So I was a teacher for a while in Italy, just near the Spanish Steps. So I did that for a while, but then I went back to Scotland in 2019, and the house in Partick was still rented out by students, so I had to serve them an eviction notice. It sounds harsh, that's terminology, and I spoke to them anyway, and they were all moving on. So I could move back into my own house, because my ex was still in India. But she had come back with the kids to Scotland. And then, against my will, she took them out of Scotland back to India. So I didn't really see my kids for a while, because then they got stuck in India because of COVID.
The pandemic hit. And then
they were supposed to come back in the February. She says, we're not going to come back in the February, we're going to come back in April. And March is when the pandemic hit. So they got stuck in India for the lockdown. And then I was here. I wasn't feeling very well. So I'd been to the doctors. You know, you come back, you've got to sign on to the doctors. Any problems? I got a wee lump here. This wee lump ends up like that. Huge big thing. And there were so many delays because of COVID and everything. Then the boys came back. And then the boys came back, and it was a few months later. Eventually, I managed to go in. In fact, it was 2021 because there was lots of delays. I had an operation, and I found out I had cancer. So that was a bit of a shock. Get a cancer taken out, do lots of treatments and stuff, and it's taken quite a while to try and recover from that. At the same time, going through a divorce, which wasn't fun. And then last year, because of the stress of the divorce, I had a heart attack. And that was shit.
So that's what I'm saying. It's like unlimited trauma. You also had an instant where you met an Italian girl as well when you were working in Rome, is that right?
Yeah, so...
we know you're a bit of a dark horse, Stewarty boy, so if you want to keep the story clean, it's up to you, but...
Clean? Of course I'll keep it clean. Yes, I think, well, that's... Okay, that just ends in a sad story, Jim. So we had a daughter, and she died shortly after birth, which was very terrible. And Juno is her name. That's her tattoo. And the thing is, she was kind of... This is all happening as my boys are coming back from India. They had to come back of Air France in one of the full body suits because they got evacuated from India. So everybody on the plane were in these full body suits for COVID. But my ex wouldn't let me know when they were coming back, so I didn't know when they were coming back. Then I found out that Juno she's got to die. And then I find out at the same time that my youngest son is in the Southern General with malaria. So I've got one dying in Rome and I've got another one dying in Glasgow. Unfortunately, Juno did die, but my youngest son didn't. I got him home again. So yeah, it's been quite traumatic. And that's all been quite traumatic. You know, if you believe in karma, maybe people say, well, you deserve it, mate. And that's fine, I don't care. You know, but as I said, we have to move on, we have to move forward.
I think the good karma will come your way eventually, Stuart.
Well, my good karma has come my way. You haven't met my two children. My two boys are exceptional. My boys, the one difference what my boys had, which I didn't have, they've been nurtured. My oldest son is a spit of me. We're exactly the same, but he's been nurtured and they're doing incredibly well. That's it.
What about your books then, Stuart?
So the book's coming out. The first book is coming out on the 13th of August. Number 4, part 1, Pickhook. You can go to, as I say, the website, number04story.com, and we've got a wait list there for the book. There's lots of people on it already, so please add your name and details to it. So as soon as the book's released, it'll be sent straight to you. It's a hardback. So the beautiful thing about it is Martin Lever, who's this internationally renowned artist, has done the cover for it and all the illustrations inside. I've got Matt Ellis, singer-songwriter from California, who's been doing all the media stuff, doing all the technology. Sorry, Matt, if I don't know what it's called, but this creative imagery and stuff. He did the website. His work is fantastic. He's written a song. I'm dying to hear the song, Matt. So he's also written a song for the book, which will be coming out soon as well. So this is part 1. And it's also a couple of years ago, I got contacted by Alan Roth, who member of the Academy of, performing, motion pictures. He's written the screenplay for episode 1, for the pilot episode of the book. So if people buy it, if people like it, if people watch it, we're hoping that it's going to be made into a couple of series for network television. I don't know, HBO, Paramount, or something like that, which would be absolutely fantastic.
Definitely. It's such an amazing story, mate. You could make so many episodes, maybe even a movie.
Yeah, who knows?
Because it was certainly one I'd like to watch. I've always been fascinated by prison stories, and especially banged up abroad, and the fact that you were only 18 and you landed in prison your 18th birthday.
That's right.
Which we spoke about in part 1. But before we finish up on this episode,
sure,
if there's another message you could send out to the audience, now is the time.
Don't give up on people. People can make mistakes. We all have to live in this world. People overcome addictions. Let's try and help them overcome them in a positive way with opportunities in life. Treat people as you want to be treated, all that, but stop looking down at people who are struggling with addiction. It's not all about them having to stop. It's all about them being managed and being supported. Neurodiversity is a big issue in the world today. And I think we just have to be a little bit more empathetic to who we all are, to work, to live and work in a happier place.
A beautiful message, mate. It's been an absolute honour to have you on for a part 2. Such an amazing story and such an amazing guy, mate. True gentleman, even though you come across as a bit of a hard man.
I'm not a
wee bit intimidating.
I'm not. I'm a big softy at heart. And don't you forget it.
But no, thanks again, mate. And
okay.
I wish you all the best for the
Cheers,
future, and I look forward to reading all your books.
Thank you.
And maybe watching one of your episodes or seeing your movie one day. So thanks again, mate. Shake my hand.
Okay.
Thank you.
Cheers, Jim.
All the best, mate.